I am so excited to be with you today because I get to share something that is so close to my heart, something that I give my life to. And it's something that we as a church get to be. And that is what we call kingdom builders. Kingdom builders is how we fund the people and projects, both locally and globally, to bring the life-changing gift of Jesus Christ and His grace and His love to a world that so desperately needs it. Now, we have this book called our Kingdom Builders Project Guide, and inside of it is all the different people that we partner with, the projects that we're a part of. There's over 100 different people and projects that are in here, and so we would love to make this available to you. You can download it or check it out online at newbreak.church/KB and take a look at everything that's on there. Now, our goal for 2021 in Kingdom Builders is to raise $1 million, $1 million, and to then give that away. Now that goes again, like I said, to over 100 missionaries and strategic partners and projects all around the world. This year, we had 2 featured projects that we did. One was in February, and that was to our water project. Our goal was to provide clean drinking water to thousands of people. And the goal was 100,000. And church, you guys came through in a huge way. You guys gave $111,000 to that. Then, another miracle on top of that is we had somebody match 100,000. So the total impact of your giving to our water project was $211,000. I'm so proud of you guys as a church. And then we had our other project a few months ago, which was Child Hope, and that was to help kids in an after-school program who are at total risk in Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And so again, our goal was 100,000. And once again, you guys did an awesome job. You gave $118,000 to that project. And I told you guys last week, if you joined us for services, we talked about how unity, that the church is supposed to be unified around a central purpose. And when we're unified around a purpose, our impact is so much bigger that can happen than just me doing one thing. Now that's important that we all do something, but when we combine that together, well, we get what we just saw in these last 2 projects, a huge impact in the world. So today, what I'm super excited about is we're talking about our 3rd project of the year, and that is for us to help end human trafficking. Now, we get to do this both locally and globally, and I want to introduce to you 2 of our partners who are working on the front lines, who've been helping to rescue girls who have been trafficked. Our global partner, which I'm going to show in just a minute, a video of an interview with her. Her name is Jennifer Jensen, and she's the founder of Global Family Daughter Project. And so you're going to get to hear from her, and this project, this house is in Nepal. And then the other person is our local partner, who's part of our, actually our Ocean Beach Newbreak campus, and her name's Leah Watson. And she's the founder of Grace, and that's Girls Rising Above Child Exploitation. And so I want you to now just sit back and watch and join my first interview with the 2 of them that we did on video. So check it out. Hi, Newbreak. I am here today with Jennifer Jensen, who is the founder and executive director of Global Family, and we are super glad to have her here. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about Global Family and kind of Newbreak's historical partnership with you.
Well, you guys have been partnering with us for a long time. Maybe not everybody knows that, but we started this journey as missionaries to North India over 22 years ago. And our main emphasis is the Daughter Project, and that's how we're probably best known. And that is our emphasis to work with children and families affected by human trafficking and the commercial sexual exploitation and movement of children.
Well, I can only imagine just the gravity and just how large of a problem this is. Can you talk to me about the magnitude of sex and human trafficking problem, both globally and just in what you do in India and the Himalayas and Nepal?
The trafficking of humans is, if not the highest grossing illegal activity in the world, drug trafficking, arms trafficking. It does make it seem like this insurmountable feat to even to attempt to tackle it. When we first became involved, it really was about one particular child, and the fact that we at the time had young children ourselves, and looking at what can happen, when a child doesn't have the perhaps the family support that we all want for our kids, and that hopefully we are able to give to our kids. Not everybody in the world is able to provide that safe home and environment for their children. And so the issue really, instead of looking at it from this, this massive, happening in pretty much every country of the world, happening right in your neighborhoods and our neighborhoods here in Scotland right now, certainly in parts of Asia, Eastern Europe, everywhere. It really started for us about one particular child in North India who had been abandoned. It was that one child, and recognizing, that what would happen to our children if we weren't able to provide for them. And that really did launch what we do as an organization, of always looking at the issue about, what if that was our child? How would we want the care for that child to look like if we weren't able to provide that support to them?
A lot of people think sex trafficking is an international problem, and it is, but it's very much a local issue as well. Here in San Diego, it's estimated as an $810 million industry annually, and it's exponentially growing. That was an old statistic, and it keeps growing year after year. The average age of entry is only 16 years old here in San Diego, and it's happening every day, all hours of the night, day, 7 days a week, here, right in our own backyards, our precious children. A lot of people think it's, because we're so close to the border, it's a lot of international kids coming in. It's American girls, American boys, our children that are getting trafficked here locally.
So I want to pose a question to you, church. Why should we, or why should I care about human trafficking as deeply as God does? When I hear about the magnitude of the problem, it really just blew my mind. And I think to answer that question, why should we care as deeply as God does about human trafficking? I think it's because, first and foremost, God has created everyone in His image. That doesn't matter if you live in America or Canada or Europe or in India or anywhere in the world. We are all equal. We are all created in the image of God. Genesis chapter 1, in just recounting the creative order, it says that God created human beings in His own image. We call that the Imago Dei, the imprint of God on everybody who lives. And it's in the image of God that He creates them, male and female. And this speaks about how that imprint of God is so important in our lives. This means that God cares about every person on this planet. So much so that He actually put His image on them, if you really think about that. And the image of God is so vast that it needed two different genders, male and female, and the differences and the beauty of that. See, we're a reflection of His likeness and His character. And that's so powerful when you really think about that. He could have made us look like any other animal or something on the planet, right? But He doesn't. He made us unique, and He puts value on all of us. See, no matter what we do or what we look like, there's nothing that we can do that would separate ourselves from being made in His image. The prophet Jeremiah said this, and he's speaking from God. He says, and this is God speaking, before I shaped you in the womb, before I created you in the womb, I knew all about you. Before you ever saw the light of day, I had holy plans for you. When I think of that, and I think of how many kids are trafficked by evil people who actually have other plans for them, those plans attempt to destroy and smear the image of God that's been put on them. I was made aware of some statistics this week as we were preparing for this weekend service, and I don't know if you know this, but there are more slaves, more people human trafficked today than were trafficked in the 4 centuries of the transatlantic slave trade. Today, there's over 40 million people who are bought, sold, and owned by others and forced into sex or labor. And here's the sad statistic. 34% of those who are trafficked are under 18. I have 2 boys that are under 18. Trafficking isn't legal anywhere in the world, but yet it happens everywhere. I came across this quote that said, "Human trafficking is a vile assault against the inherent value that we each have as God's image bearers. Trafficking demeans the individual. It assaults their soul, their dignity. Trafficking is ultimately that says this to the child, that your value is only the money you can make. It fails to see that these kids are image bearers of God. This breaks God's heart because we are all his kids." As a pastor, when I think about this, when I think about my own two boys, well, you don't want to know what I think. It's probably not good to say in church. It burns inside of me. It makes me want to do something as a dad, as a father, and I think it breaks the heart of God. But here's the thing, there's hope in the midst of this, because there are people who care. There are people like you, Newbreak Church, who care. There are partners like the two we're talking about today, the Daughter Project and Grace, that care and help. See, at the heart of the Daughter Project and the heart of Grace, the ministry of Grace, there is a belief and a conviction that each of these girls is a precious daughter of God. And I would say, think of it this way, each of these girls are as precious as your own children. This is why we walk alongside our partners, because God calls us to rescue people. Why? Because we've all been rescued. We've all been rescued. We've all at one point in our lives didn't know God. We're apart from God. And Jesus' death on the cross, his blood that paid for the redemption and paid for our sins, has brought us into his family as his kids, whom he loves dearly. And that's God's heartbeat. If you're following along and you have a Bible with you or a device where you can turn to the Bible passage, I want to direct you to a book called Isaiah. Isaiah is written by a prophet by the name Isaiah, and he has a lot to say about what we're talking about today. Isaiah 58, verse 6, he talks to the people of God, and what he's doing is what's happening in the first 5 verses of this passage is that the people, which were the people of Israel, the people of God, they were complaining to God, and they were complaining saying, "God, you don't hear our prayers, you're not blessing us. You know, we want to know you, we're drawing close to you, we've humbled ourselves, like God, we even fast, we even give up food, you know, and we're hungry because we want to draw close to you." And fasting was a way of doing that in the Old Testament and even today, where you would give up something of value, like food, or you'd give up something so that you could draw close to God, or so that you could do something that was, you know, mattered to God. And so they're saying, "God, we're fasting," and they're complaining, "Well, nothing's happening." And God shoots back to them and he says, "Listen, this is just this outward thing you're doing. It's not from your heart, because when you fast, when you're supposed to be giving something up to draw near to me or to be helping others, you end up fighting with each other. You end up, doing your own thing. You are basically ignoring my commands." And so God responds to their complaint. And he says, "Listen, you want to impress me? You want to really do a fast that matters?" And then that's verse 6. Let's read it together. God says to them, "Is not this the kind of fasting that I have chosen?" So he's about to tee this up. He's taking them on. He says, "To loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke." Now, we don't use that word that much today, yoke, but they would take 2 oxen and put this harness over both of them, and the oxen would plow a field together. So it was this kind of this yoke, this rope around the neck, if you will. And he says, "I've called you to loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free, and to break all the chains, all the yoke, all the ropes around people's necks." And then he says, "Is not the fast to share your food with the hungry, to provide the poor wanderer with shelter, and when you see the naked, to clothe them, to not turn away from your own flesh and blood, In other words, God's saying, the fasting that I want for you is to give up something in order to make an actual difference in the world. This passage literally outlines what our partners are doing, what Daughter Project and what Grace is doing. They're literally freeing girls from the chains of injustice. And then they give them food and shelter and clothing and God's love and the dignity that they deserve as daughters of Jesus. It's just powerful when you read this. In my interview with Jennifer, she goes on and tells us a little bit more of kind of what they do, their strategy of how they rescue and restore these girls. So let's join Jennifer again in the interview. So Jennifer, talk to us about the strategy and how you reach these young girls who have been trafficked.
We have a fantastic team, our lead coordinator, Surin, and just working with him since day one on, okay, how do you tackle this? We can literally stand at the border and see children being taken across. It's a very open border, people cross all the time. And so through a lot of trial and error, a lot of meetings with local partners, really launched our model of prevention. If it's our children, we want to protect them from any harm. I mean, that's just something that we can all agree on. So let's do a lot on the prevention side. So that means community efforts, local clubs, awareness campaigns, working through, and these are all through our local churches in Nepal. And we have a fantastic church network. We need a safe place. We need a brick and mortar piece. And that's what we call a shelter. Law enforcement, the police bring a lot of the children to us who've been rescued, and that shelter is a place where, okay, we're going to take in that child with everything that they come in with. They come in with trauma, they come in with mental health disorders. A lot of them have a lot of physical needs. Our stats for getting children back home, depending on the country, are between 80 and 95%. We want that child to go back home with their family. That is where they belong. But when that is not possible, and there are times when that is not possible, then something that you've been very involved in is what we call a family home. And that is a max of 8 to 10 children in a family setting. And those children then grow up together, just like our kids do, go to school, go to church. They have uncles and aunties through the church that kind of adopt them for special occasions and things like that. But we want to make sure that they have every opportunity to grow up in a family setting so that they can grow up and have all the things that, our kids deserve. And so that's kind of how the Daughter Project works.
I love what Jennifer said. She said, placing kids in a family setting, and that's really where they get to experience the love and support that every child should have. Okay, so I'm excited now because I want to introduce to you our other partner, Leah Watson, who's here with us in person. So Leah, come on up here.
Hi.
Glad you're with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I would like for you to share with Newbreak, just how did you first get involved with Newbreak and how did you start Grace?
Yes, Grace Ministries was formed out of a life group at Newbreak Ocean Beach. I started Discover Your Pathways with Pastor Carter, and there I discovered God's grace. And that just wrecked me. The fact that I could be set free of my own past of guilt and shame and break those chains of bondage and be washed clean. And it wasn't a transaction. Everything in my past had been such a transaction. This wasn't a transaction, it was a free gift. And all I had to do was receive it. And along with that life group, there was an icebreaker question along the lines of, if you had unlimited funds and resources to do something to change this world, what would it be? And I was like, I would start a rehabilitation center house rehabilitation for victims of child sex trafficking. And I went back to my hotel that night and I wrote down Grace in all capital letters. I was like, that would be a great name for a program, but what could it stand for? And it came out, Girls Rising Above Child Exploitation. I'm like, cool, but what does exploitation mean? And I Google it and it fit. I'm like, oh my goodness, it fits. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I just felt so called to this. And I brought it back to Pastor Carter, and Newbreak Ocean Beach got behind us. And, all this doubt started setting in of like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not equipped. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a social worker. I don't have unlimited funds and resources, but God does. And I just felt called to do this, and I was able to use my own freedom to help free others.
I love that part of your story where you're like, I wonder who has unlimited resources. Of course, God does. And I love that you took this step of courage and faith to do something that, a lot of people would be like, how do I do this? What do I do, right? All the doubts and everything. So I just love that. Take a few minutes and share with us some of the success stories that you've already had.
Oh my goodness, we've been doing this for almost 5 years now. We have a lot of stories, but I'll just share a couple with you. The need is astronomical, and there's no way that we could do it on our own. We partner with so many different organizations and individuals throughout the county, and some of our partners are Olympians. We have an Olympic volleyball player, Carrie Walsh-Jennings, who partnered with one of our youth to sponsor her volleyball league, which allowed her to then get a scholarship to go to a private Christian school in order to play volleyball there and keep her out of trouble, and she's doing so well in school now. Another Olympian was an Olympic boxer who's now also a professional boxer, and she's partnered with one of our youth. One of our youth was getting in a lot of trouble. A lot of times overseas traffic situations, they are kept in cages, things like that. Here in the States, a lot of it is a psychological prison, and the trauma that they've experienced, it'll come out in different ways. So one of our youth was getting in a lot of trouble, getting in fights, getting kicked out of every school for all of her fighting. So this boxer has been working with her to help channel that energy into a healthy way and into an appropriate outlet. And then one of my favorite stories is one of our youth who has come full circle. We've been working with her for a very long time. She started off as a teenager in our program, and she went through all of the therapeutic programming, and she was still actively in the life. She was coming in and out of the life throughout the time that we were working with her, and it was just breaking my heart time and time again. But I see her as God sees her, and I just stuck by her side. Consistency is key. And one time she calls me and she was like, "Leah, I'm tired. I don't want to go on this date, but I need toiletries and I need groceries, and I have to go on this date in order to get that." And I was like, "Girl, hold on. I will be there. Give me 2 hours. I'll get you the groceries." And I brought those groceries to her, and she's like, "Well, what do you want for this?" Because again, everything's a transaction. And I got to explain to her all about God's grace and how this is a free gift because she is so worthy and so loved. And that just kind of sparked something in her. And she kept coming back to programming, and she finally left the life. And we've been working with her furthermore, being able to help her with her education and getting her ready for her career. And through our program, she's helping us develop our Grace University. So she now interns with us. And life is challenging, and she ran into another situation and she fell on hard times, and she calls me and she's like, "Hey, I'm contemplating going back into the life because I need money and I know how to get it quick." And I'm like, "No, that's not what we need to do. You have to make, the hard choice now to have the easy life later. Let's sit down and let's work through this." So we get to walk with them every step of the way. It doesn't end day one. It's a lifelong journey, and we get to be a part of that journey with them. And she's doing so good. She's able to stay out of the life, and she's still working with us now, and she's just helping others now. So it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah. It's awesome. I love how it's kind of like this whole 360 all the way around. So not only helping at the front end, but just following through life and making sure they're successful. And I love it. Love your ministry. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
You're welcome. I just think about what our partners are doing, and it's just so powerful, the success stories of what God's actually doing in the lives of these girls. I want to go back to our passage in Isaiah just for a minute and talk about really how God's power in our life and how it looks like in your life when we get involved with our partners. When we fast something simply as money, okay? And that's really what we're talking about today. Fasting something of value so we can make a difference in other people's lives. So when we do something as simple as giving to these projects and our partners and our people that are on the front lines, the difference that they can make. And it's right in this passage we just read. In Isaiah 58, starting now at verse 8, God then tells them, "Hey, this is what I want. I want you to, loose the cords of injustice, feed, clothe, shelter those." And then he says this, and it's a promise to you and I. He says, "Then your light," in other words, when you do these things, when you do this kind of fast, when you help people, when you care about what God cares about, then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. So light comes to us. We're able to see things better. We all need wholeness in our life. He says your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. What's he talking about? In other words, when we live right, God watches your back. God sees what's ahead of you that you and I don't see. The pandemic did not catch God off guard. It's why we as a church, we're able to change and do more than we ever did in 2020, and then even more now this year. It doesn't catch God off guard when we're generous. And he watches our back. That's what he says. His glory will be your rear guard. I don't see what's coming behind me sometimes. He says, then you'll call and the Lord will answer and you will cry for help and he will say, here I am. I don't know about you, but that's what I want for my life. That's what I want for my family. That's what I want for all of you at Newbreak Church. See, to be blessed, it's because we speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. It's because we help those who can't help themselves. I know there was that saying that's gone on for decades that God only helps those who help themselves. That is the biggest lie ever. God helps those who can't help themselves. And he sends a very specific group of people. That's called the church. And that's why we do this. Now, God finishes his thought in verse 10. He says, now, if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness. And your night will become like noonday, like the middle of, 12 o'clock noon. Think of that. Your light will rise even in the darkest places. I don't know about you, but there is a lot of darkness in this world right now. Maybe you're listening today and you're in a huge season of darkness. There's a lot of darkness in the lives of these girls. I could imagine that some of them are praying that they would find a way out of the horrific situations they find themselves in. I would imagine they are praying for a miracle that would bring them freedom. Just for a minute, if you could just picture one of these girls who's being trafficked in India. And they're in a dark room that's been darkened out so nobody can see what they're doing. Those that own them and trafficking them keep them in this dark room. And they're sitting on a bed, and that bed, is where they've been told to do what they need to do. You think about they're sitting there alone, lost, hurting, abandoned. And I could just picture them saying, God, please help me. God, please hear me. They're hoping that someday, somehow, they're going to see a light dawning in their lives. Church, we get to be that light today. We get to be that light today. When we show up in obedience, God shows off his power, is what that verse is saying in our lives. I want you to listen to one last story from Jennifer Jensen of this girl where her prayers were answered. Check this out.
A few years ago, we had a little girl in our shelter home in Kathmandu, Nepal. When we take a girl in, whether she's been brought to us by the police, another nonprofit, other government entities, we take them in, we care for all their needs. We get them to a place of healing and health so that they can go back home. The goal is always, we want to care for them and give them everything we can, but then we want that girl to go back home so she can be a daughter again, so she can be a sister, a niece, somebody's friend, and not be in institutional care long term. So that's a really important point of our organization. And it can take a long time in a place like Nepal to find out where a child is from. We start very basically with some children, depending on their age and their school level. Sometimes we get a picture, and it might involve, this is what my house looks like, and it's near a river, and there's a temple, and then there's a school. And that's sometimes what we have to go off of. And so this particular little girl had been rescued, and she was with us for over 2 years, which is a very long time. This little girl was extra challenging, and our team worked so hard and for so long to finally find her family. And so to watch that reunification, I think the journey to where she lived took 2 days by car, and then I think 3 days by foot to get this little girl back home. And we actually have this on video, which is rare there, but the team member that took her back was able to just take a little screenshot of this little girl hugging her dad, and her dad had thought she was gone forever. and it did seem like forever. And to just watch the tears roll down his face as he hugged his little girl, I mean, there's just nothing better.
There is nothing better. That image, I want that to just burn in your mind of that dad holding her daughter and crying. Listen, there's kids here in San Diego, there's kids all over the world who are praying for a reunion just like that. So I want to say this, church. Let's be the answer to someone's prayer. Let's be the answer to someone's prayer. Maybe you're thinking, what can I do? What can I do? Well, after watching that, I think you can go give your kids a hug after watching this and hold them extra tight. I think you should look your kids in the eye and tell them how much you love them. But I also want you to consider giving financially to be the answer to somebody else's prayer. I want us to give today to rescue girls from the life that they're enslaved in. They're separated from their families, they're robbed of their dignity, but we can provide them with freedom, shelter, food, clothing, restoration. So our goal this weekend is to raise $100,000. I just for a minute want to give you how that can work out maybe for you personally as you're thinking about what God's laying on your heart to give. And so you think about globally with Daughter Project. Did you know $1,000, if you give $1,000, that provides a safe bed for a year in Nepal. It provides a safe home for a girl for an entire year. It provides them room and board. I think some of you right now can help 5 girls. I think another way that this can help is $100. Maybe you're like, I can't give $1,000, but maybe you can give $100. Well, that helps 10 girls in Nepal to receive education, prevention training, and helps with family reunification. Maybe some of you can help 50 girls. I want to challenge you if you're watching this right now. Our goal is 100,000. We have a great church. I have every reason to believe we're going to hit that goal, but that takes all of us to do that. Maybe you're watching right now and you can be a strategic matching partner. Like in our water project, somebody said, listen, if you raise 100, I'll give 100. Maybe you're watching and you can do that. We'll raise the 100 and you're going to pledge to give 100,000. Maybe you're watching, you're like, no, I can't do 100, but I'll do 50,000. I know some of you out there have the means and ability to do that, and I want to challenge you. I want to challenge all of us. It's really about listening to the voice of God. What is He telling us in this moment right now to give? That's what matters. I want to tell you as a pastor, as lead pastor of this church, every penny you give to this, you'll go online and in a few minutes, Pastor Isaac will tell you how to do that. Every dime, every penny that you give goes to these organizations. We don't keep any of it for administrative fees. It's 100% in, 100% out. I realize some of you may need to have a conversation with your spouse about, hey, what is it we should give as a family? My wife and I, Lisa, we do this every time there's a project. I remember in the water project earlier this year, she was somewhere else at a different campus and I was at one, and I remember praying, I was like, God, what do you want me to do? And so He gave me this number and I was like, whoa, okay. And I saw Lisa later that afternoon at our house and I said, hey, did you pray about what we should give? And she said, yes. I go, what was your number? She goes, let's each write it down on a piece of paper. So we did and then showed it and it was the exact same number. I thought, that's really cool. I'm glad you listened to God because sometimes I don't hear very clear, but we had it and it was awesome. I say all that to say, listen, whatever God tells you to do, this is really easy. Just do it. Just do it. Do it and be part of something that's going to change the world and change the world for these girls. I want to say a quick prayer. Now, don't leave when I'm done praying. Pastor Isaac's coming up, so let's just pray for a minute. Father, I pray right now that you would move on our hearts, that you would stir us to be the people that you want us to be. People who care about what you care about. People who are generous to a fault. Because that's not what we do, but it's who we are. We are kingdom builders. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to say this, Lord, may your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. God bless.
Hey, I love that challenge from Pastor Robert. I love what he said. When we show up in our obedience, God is going to show up in his power. And so if you're ready to give, here's how to do it. We encourage you to check out our Kingdom Builders page, and you can go to our website. The link is going to be on screen, but it's newbreak.church/KB. And you can read more about the project, both our partnerships with Global Family, the Daughter Project, as well as Grace locally. And when you're ready to give, hit that Give to This Project button and make sure you select Trafficking Project in the drop-down menu. That ensures that 100% of what we give today, and I say we give because this is an all-skate, 100% of that goes to those two organizations. Church, I know that we're going to lead the way in generosity. Now, the band's going to come up in a few moments, and they're going to lead us in a song. And this song is a powerful song. It's called Sons and Daughters. And it's a reminder of our identity, that ultimately who we're serving, they too are sons and daughters of God. And I love the opening verse of the song. It simply says that before God spoke creation, he knew our name. And maybe as the band is singing that song, maybe that's what you need to hear today. That before God created the world, he knew your name. Maybe you've been feeling overlooked, undervalued, ignored. Maybe you're like the people in Isaiah that Pastor Robert was talking about. You just feel like your prayers are just hitting the ceiling. God wants you to know that you are a precious son and a daughter in his eyes. But not only that, the people that we get to serve today, those girls that we get to serve, they're precious daughters in God's eyes too. So would you sing with us and worship with us and allow the words of this song to wash over you?
Before he spoke creation, the God of heaven knew our names. Formed in his reflection, we are his glory on display. And his heart is good, he is always kind. With the cross he proved he is on our side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, he will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and he will never forsake his own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. His love he lavished on us and called us children of the King. Thank you, Lord. And in his loving kindness, he chose the lowly and the weak. And his heart is good, he is always kind. With the cross he proved he is on our side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, he will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and he will never forsake his own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. we can't see past the dark of night. Remind us you're always by our side. And when the lies speak louder than the truth, remind us we belong to you. And when we can't see past the dark of night, remind us we're always by your side. We're by your side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, He will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and He will never forsake His own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. Sing one more time. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, He will not let us fall. We are the Lord's, and He will never forsake His own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God.